Hello again, everyone, and welcome again to a Shortstop with a Shortstop. Today we're going to be talking a little bit of baseball. We're going to be talking a whole lot of Bible.
And the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall arise,
But I have a guest with me today. His name is B.J. Clarke. He's the director of the School of Preaching at the Memphis School of Preaching. And we're so glad to have him here today. Welcome, B.J.
Good to be with you.
All right.
Yes, sir.
You know I'm going to bring up the story. The very first thing that I'm going to bring up is
I'm afraid of what
is the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Of course, yes.
But the story that I got to bring up here is you came here to do a gospel meeting one time and you forgot your shoes.
I did.
I'm going to let you go ahead and finish the story.
I remember getting to Paintsville, and I had stayed in a hotel the night before, and I left my dress shoes there. Didn't know it until that Sunday morning. I got all dressed up in my suit, went to get my shoes, and I had a pair of Crocs and tennis shoes with a squiggly pattern on the bottom of them. And I called my wife and I said, "Which one would you wear to a friend's day? They're having their friend's day today, and I'm embarrassed." And I said, "I'm wearing the Crocs." She said, No, the tennis shoes." And then I got desperate. I called you and I said, you answered the phone, and I said, "How far do you live from the church building, and what size shoe do you wear?" And you said, I think you said at 11 or something.
11 and a half.
And I'm a 12. And so I said, "Well, I need you to bring me a pair of dress shoes to the church building. I've forgotten my shoes." This good brother of mine I get out in the parking lot, and you have the shoes in your hand, and you say, "Profess your love for the Giants." I'm a Dodgers fan. That's the last thing in the world I want to do is profess my love for the Giants. But I'm desperate, and I said I would profess my love for Iraq, Iran, or any other organization right now. Please just give me the shoes. And so I wore his.
I'm going to add just a little bit to it here, though. You told me that you called your dad and told him what was going on.
Yes.
And he told you to tell me that you're going barefooted before you'll ever say anything good about the Giants.
Oh, that's true. That's exactly right.
And
yes.
I thought that was one of the greatest lines I'd ever heard, because you and your dad are two of the biggest Dodger fans that I've ever known.
Right.
And I think that's great. Anybody that's a baseball fan is great. But let's talk just for a second or two about the National League West.
All right.
The Dodgers have spent a whole lot of money.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
And they've amassed themselves a really, really good team. And if they stay healthy and their cohesion is good, what do you think about them?
Well, if all it takes to win a championship is to spend money, then they're World Series champs right now. But as you know from your own experience and just watching baseball as well, it's not enough to have the most high-paid players on your team. You got to have some chemistry, and so I guess I hope the egos on that team can stay in check, and that they can actually perform as a team. If they do, I mean, the lineup on paper looks phenomenal, but we'll see what the game situations actually materialize. I'm not sure exactly what to expect just yet.
I did get from your wife last night, Tish, that she's still a little bit mad at the Dodgers for not signing Seager.
Yes, absolutely. I'm not too far behind her there. Yeah, he was a good shortstop.
He was.
We have not really replaced him with a good shortstop.
Now, I'll be honest with you. I think the San Diego Padres have an awful good team, too.
Oh, I do, too, and that's what's a little bit alarming. So, and I know the Giants are always, somehow they always find a way to get in there, even when on paper it doesn't look like they have the stars. They somehow mesh together and are competitive.
But they also better watch out for the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah.
Because the Braves have always had a good team the last couple of years, and they haven't really lost anybody from what they've got coming back. And they have the pitching and the hitting and the defense. So it's going to be a wild year, I think. And I think it's going to be a really good year in baseball this year too, though.
Right.
But let's get down to a little bit more serious business here. The eldership in the church. Elders or shepherds, they need to stink. They need to smell. They need to be around the sheep. And the eldership here is really good at that. But if you were going to give advice at the School of Preaching on the preacher-elder relationship, and I've never been there as far as when the classes are being taught, but I'm assuming that at some point in time there's got to be some teaching about elder-preacher relationship. And we have our preacher here is filming us, so this will be good for him to hear too.
Right. Well, it's very important now. The dynamic of that can make or break a congregation. I know I've been generally blessed to work under very good elderships and had good relationships with those elderships. A preacher friend of mine became an elder, and he joked, he said, I hadn't been an elder 15 minutes, already can't stand preachers. But that is not...
you don't edit that, Zach.
That is not what good elders think, and good preachers do not try to become elders because they recognize Scripture is what dictates who's in charge, and according to Hebrews 13:17, elders have the rule over the congregation. Philippians 1:1 talks about the bishops and the deacons, the saints, all of them together where preachers serve as members under the elders' oversight. And I've been in a congregation where I basically, if anything was going to get done, I was going to have to suggest it to the elders. But then I moved to a church where the elders were very much in charge, and not in a domineering sort of way. They were actually hands-on, and I was listening to their direction. I much prefer it that way than the first way.
Well, I'm sure most preachers would, but that comes back to having an eldership or shepherds, as you say, the word active or involved in all aspects or all works of the congregation that's going on at that time. And
one thing that y'all do here that I really like, and I've actually tried to get elderships to do in other places where I've been the local preacher, is that when the invitation is given, the elders are the ones who go up and stand and are ready to receive anyone that might come forward. I think that's excellent, because if we're not careful, though we don't call our preachers pastor, because sometimes he's in the role and position of some of those things, people might get the mistaken idea that he is the pastor, though he's not trying to make them think that. So what you all do is, I think, subtle but very effective, because it says we're still shepherding this flock and we care about it, and there's someone standing up here to assist you and to help you. That's so important.
it is. But if somebody's coming forward, who should be the first people that they see other than the shepherds?
Yeah.
The people that are going to be responsible for their souls.
Right, exactly.
And we want them to know that and get to understand that, and that they are going to be cared about and taken care of and spiritually involved. We want to get them all involved also spiritually. And it's I've seen a few other elderships at different congregations do it, but not that many.
Right.
But there may be some elders that'll be watching this show, and they may implement that. And if they do, that's great. If they don't, that's their prerogative too, because each congregation is autonomous, as we know. But another question. We had a couple of young men baptized yesterday. And in the book of Hebrews, it says that their newborn babes are going to be on the milk for a while, which means they're going to be learning and trying to process. Don't want to give them the meats where they choke on it. But what would be your advice to a congregation to inform them and allow them to grow as babes in Christ and mature. Any advice that you could give on that?
Right. New converts really need instruction. You know, there's two parts to the Great Commission. There's the teach them and baptize them part, and then there's the teach them all things whatsoever I've commanded you. And so sometimes we dip them and drop them, and that's not the right way to approach it. One thing that my dad, who's a preacher before he retired, did in local work that I thought was effective. They took, Wendell Winkler had a book called Toward Spiritual Maturity, and they would assign families in the congregation to host the new Christians into their home for a meal and to go over the material in one of those messages, in one of those lessons. And they not only did they get to study the Bible together with new Christians, they got to bond together socially. Now, you can have a new converts class at the church building as well, you know, on a Sunday or Wednesday, and that can still be effective. But that extra layer of social connection, I think, solidifies some of the relationships and helps you to grow as members of the body.
My own personal opinion on one of the things, they need to have association with the other members. Mm-hmm. They need to have friends.
Yeah.
And if they have friends, at least 3 to 4 friends, yeah, it's more likely that they're going to stay involved. But if they don't have any friends, there's always that bad possibility that they can slip away. And last night you preached, or you gave an example of a person being baptized and never coming back again. Right. That can always happen too.
Right.
And that's something that we don't want to ever happen. But unfortunately, it does from time to time. Not very often, but it can happen.
You know, in Acts 2, Johnny, one of the key words there that you read about after the 3,000 were baptized, it keeps saying they were together. Yeah. Together. The idea through Acts 2, 3, and 4, there was a togetherness that if you don't have that, it's going to make it a lot easier for people to fall away because there's no one really there to encourage them and keep them to keep on keeping on.
They were actually meeting daily also. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They weren't just meeting on a Sunday or a Wednesday. Right. They were meeting on a daily basis. And, and that brings up another subject, Hebrews 10:25, trying to get them to understand that that's not a suggestion, but that's a command.
Right. And you know, it's a command that reminds me that if you love me, keep my commandments, yeah, Jesus said. And the greatest commandment is to love God with all of our heart, our soul, our strength, our mind. So if we can get a man to love God that much, then it's going to be more natural for him to want to come and be a part of obeying the command to assemble because he just wants to. I remember when I was dating my wife and we were engaged, no one had to twist my arm to make me want to get up at the crack of dawn on Saturday morning to drive down to Atlanta, Georgia, Marietta, to see her. I went because I wanted to. Love drove me there, so to speak. And, you know, that's the way it is. When you love God with your whole being and you have a chance to worship him, you can't wait to be there. And it's very important, too, because, you know, that old illustration about some member that had quit attending and then the elders or preacher visited and there was a fire burning. They went and took a coal out of the burning fire and just laid it on the hearth of the fireplace without comment, and then later came back to it and said, you'll notice this thing's cooled down now because it's no longer, you know, receiving the heat of, and so there's a sense in which our brethren cool down when they get away from the group, and it helps to cool their faith rather than give fervor to it.
Yeah, it does, and it's unfortunately probably a problem in every congregation, but that's why we keep preaching on it constantly, not to use it as a everyday sermon or anything like that, but it's something that constantly needs to be brought up and to let them know that we care about them and that we love them and we want them here and we want to get them to heaven even if we have to drag them in with us. But We want to thank BJ for being here and thank Zach for filming us. And we want to thank you all for watching and thank you again for being with a shortstop with a shortstop.